This is the General Lee. From 1979 through 1985, the TV series Dukes of Hazzard made every teenager want one of these cars, whether it be jumping over a bridge or running from Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane. Now, rumor has it they destroyed over 300 cars during the run of that series. But this car is a special car. It's one of the originals. But we want to find out more about it, why it is anointed, why it is here at the Volo Auto Museum. So we're looking to talk to Brian Grams about the history of this car.
Well, here at the museum we've got lots of different TV and movie cars that we've been collecting over the years, and we're always looking to better our collection. Went through a couple of the 2005 movie cars, and that's when we ran across the car that we currently have. It had all the Warner Brothers, provenance with it, all the the paperwork and that. But there's a little bit of confusion as far as what the car really was. One story of it was that it was an actual screen used car. Another story was that it was built for but never used. And another story was that it was a leftover parts car that was turned into a replica for the transportation coordinator's son. So we bought it regardless, whatever it is. It gave me something to do, gave me something to discover and research, to find out what the car was.
Of course, there are many naysayers that always have their doubts about what a car is, where it came from. But this led you on a journey. How long did it take you to kind of put all the pieces together for this car?
Well, what we've got here is 10 years of research, and what the car turned out to be is the 6th General Lee ever built, and it's the last one that was built in Georgia. The very first few episodes of Dukes of Hazzard were filmed in Georgia for season 1. They went on Christmas break. The Georgia crew got a phone call that there's filming was going to continue for season 1 in California, not in Georgia. So production moved over there.
So can you give us kind of a timeline from the car being created to how you ended up getting it?
We purchased it in about 2008, and we were technically the third owner since Warner Brothers ownership. And the odometer statements were on the bill of sale. The car's only had 1,500 miles put on it since 1978. There was a person, Robbie Parks, who was the original owner to the Dodge Charger, and they sold it to Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers then sold it to Don Schischler, who was the transportation coordinator in Georgia for the TV series. So he was the man in charge of keeping all all the cars in the TV series up and running and in good working order. He sold it to a man, John Blanchett. Something that I think is kind of cool is it's the first General Lee ever to be sold to the public. This was sold to the public in 1980. There's an Auto Trader ad that was placed, and that was the first ad ever for a General Lee for sale. So it's the first General Lee ever released by Warner Brothers.
So on your site there's a picture of a guy painting the 01 on the General Lee. You got a call from that guy. Tell me the story.
Yeah, one of the photos that we have posted on our website is when the car was originally getting the graphics painted on there. And we thought it was Larry West. Larry West was the man known, that was doing it during the series. And it was on our social media, on our Facebook page, and somebody responded, said, "That's not Larry West, that's me." And this guy's name was Ron Edwards. Yeah, Ronnie did say that, he did one TV series car, and it was gold with a 360. Ours was gold with a 360. And it's kind of cool because in order to give them a template on how to paint the roof, they cut the roof off of Lee number 2 because it was junk at that point. So they cut the roof off, gave them the car and gave them the roof and had them duplicate it. He was able to supply me with a lot more photos that he took when he had done the graphics on the car. So I was looking for some kind of a timestamp in those photos. And one thing that I noticed is there is a campaign sign in the background for Bill Hutton for sheriff. Well, he campaigned during 1979, and was elected sheriff in November of 1979. Don Schischler didn't get the car until December 1st, 1979. So I've got this picture of the car as a General Lee before Don Schischler ended up with the car. Ronnie was able to put me in contact with John Schischler, who was Don's son, and the one that the car was supposedly a replica built for. And when I talked to John on the phone, I explained to him, I'm just trying to figure out what the car is, get to the bottom line. If it's a replica, so be it. If it was screen used, so be it. Whatever the story is, the story is. And when I told him about the replica story, he said there's nothing further from the truth. And he talked about how he remembers that car very well because it was the last one that was ever built. He did claim that it was built with intentions to be used, but because of the disruption between the Georgia and California production, the car ended up not being used. But the car was built on Warner Brothers dollar. It was built with every intention to be used. And if that disruption from Georgia to California didn't happen, the car would have been used. It would have been trashed and it wouldn't exist today. So that disruption is the only reason the car even exists.
So what are the differences between the Georgia Lees and the California Lees?
The Georgia cars, there is some differences between them and the California cars. The General Lee had a tan interior, and they pretty much looked for cars with tan interiors, so they didn't have to do anything. The Georgia Lees also, everything was hand painted, all the graphics on the car, the O1, the roof, and that was a very time-consuming process to hand paint all that stuff. So they had to figure out how to do it quicker. Stencils, decals. The Georgia cars had a narrow push bar on the front. California had a wider push bar, and also the wheels on it. The early General Lees had a 14-inch gray spoked wheel, where the California cars, they were able to get a black spoked 15-inch wheel that was much cheaper. Something else is the Georgia cars also had a Dixie horn installed into them, where the California cars, they just piped that in during editing, the sound of the horn. And none of the cars had welded shut doors. That's just Hollywood trickery to make you think that, but there was not a single one with welded doors.
What was your first lead that said this car is special?
Travis Bell. He was formerly the head of the General Lee fan club, and he's also the one that found Lee number 1 in a junkyard and pulled it out of the junkyard to do a restoration on it. And something he noted is the roll bar, or a section of the roll bar, was missing out of Lee 1, and he had a suspicion that it was in our car. So he came out and looked our car over and was able to confirm that the missing section of roll bar was in fact the part that was in our car.
So in your research, you have Travis confirming that the roll bar was from General Lee 1.
Right.
You've got Ron Edwards talking about his memory of the car. He actually painted the O1 on the side of the car. So you have his recollection, his memory, but I'm told you have more.
One other person that I was able to get through to was Henry Holman, who was the owner of the body shop where all these cars were maintained. And talking to him over the phone, he did say that he remembers the car very well because he's the one that actually found it. He was at a gas station picking up beer, and somebody was there pumping gas in this gold 69 Charger. It was a woman, and he approached her and said, hey, we're filming this TV show and we need some Dodge Chargers. Do you want to sell yours? So he ended up bringing her back to Don Schischler, and he purchased the car for Warner Brothers. And the car ended up going to Henry's place. So sometime between middle of December of 78 and November 26th of 79 is when the car was built by H&H Body Shop. That is the original paint. That is the original hand-painted graphics that are on there. I don't know of any other General Lee out there that has original hand-painted graphics. Ours is a Survivor as opposed to a restoration, and they're only original one time.
I'd like to thank Brian Grams for over 10 years of research and obtaining documents to prove undeniably that this car is the holy grail of General Lee's.